Live is next on Fox Local. I'll see you at 4.
Stop sharing.
I'm your host, Anita Blanton, and I'll be working with you through the 4 p.m. hour. We've got a jam-packed show today. I mean, there's a whole lot to talk about. So let's get right into what we have lined up for this first hour that we have here together. The March jobs report numbers are in. Now think about the month of March. I know we just got into April. Sometimes I can't remember yesterday. but experts say that the numbers are better than expected. And they're coming at a particular time frame when, of course, we were starting up the beginning of the war in Iran, which has even had some major developments today. We're praying for the family of our troops that were shot down out of the air today. So in Iran, there's a lot of uncertainty that's been, now spread throughout the world at this point in time. A lot of volatility because of the war in Iran. So we're going to talk to an expert to get some analysis about the numbers that we see, maybe what we're not seeing yet, and the ramifications of what we're seeing also. Also, I'm really looking forward to a discussion with a professor of anthropology and Asian studies who is calling attention to what he says is a distinctly American worldview held by AI. So if you think about, there's people all over the world who are using AI now. Almost every day here on the show, at some point in time, we say, look, there's a lot of wonderful things about AI, a lot of very concerning things about AI. If you were someone of, particular ethnicity, particular background that's asking AI about something that pertains to your culture or from where you're from, and it gives you a response that's limited in its scope, it really makes you question AI as a whole. So we're going to be talking to him about some of the studying that he's done on that. Also, you do not want to miss my discussion, especially if you live here in the city of Chicago. And we have a lot of folks who join us from a lot of different places, but especially if you live here in the city of Chicago. We have an investigative reporter with the Sun-Times. Boy, oh boy, do they have a bombshell article that's out right now. It's entitled City Hall's Fine Mess. And it says that Chicago city workers, mostly CTA and CPS employees, owe more than $19 million in traffic tickets, water bills, and various fines. Nobody that pays taxes in our city wants to hear it, but we should definitely find out a few more details about what they were able to uncover in that report. But we're going to start things off here at the top of our show with our own Cassie Carlson, who is on quite the disturbing story today that harkens back to AI and some of the disturbing uses of it. She's in Lake Zurich, or on her way to Lake Zurich. Thank you so much for making some time for us as you were en route, and tell us about this story.
Hi, Anita. Yeah, we are about 20 minutes from Lake Zurich. We're heading straight for the police department. They are investigating, as you mentioned, a really disturbing case. Lake Zurich High School students reportedly were creating AI-generated images, explicit images of other students. Now, we're learning a little bit more about the timeline just in the last several minutes from a statement from the superintendent of the school district, School District 95. Now, apparently this happened in February. This is when the school district was made aware of these explicit AI-generated images. They launched an investigation and contacted the Lake Zurich Police Department. They also contacted the families of students involved, both those who were reportedly creating these images and the students who the images were made of. This dates back to February 26th, but we are just learning about it today because the school district statement came out just last night. We are looking into this as we head up to Lake Zurich. We know the police department is involved, and we did get confirmation from them. We will also be speaking with retired Naperville Police Detective Rich Wistocki, who is a familiar face to many of our viewers and who specializes in cyber crime. So we're looking forward to getting his take on this situation. But as you can imagine, just incredibly violating for the fellow students whose image and likeness was used in these AI AI generated images and for their families. We do know school is out today for Good Friday, also for Easter Monday. So we know there won't be any students or families on campus today, but we do hope to learn more about this in the next several hours.
Yeah, I think about so many things as you speak on the initial details that we're getting of this. I'm wondering if, because the police department is involved and we're dealing with possibly all minors here, are we looking at adult charges, possibly?
Yeah.
This is a very serious thing.
It is. And the superintendent has made it clear that this is now a criminal investigation. That is the term that she used in her letter to families. She said that because of that, she cannot share any more details or any specifics of this case, and even mentioned, and I'll read this line directly from the letter. She said, because of the concerning nature of this incident, it is likely to draw media attention and unfortunately not in a positive light. So this is very serious, and we will learn more about the severity of this and what charges these students could be facing from Rich Wistocki when we chat with him in the next hour or so. You can catch that on Fox 32 at 4 and 5 p.m. But as you mentioned, it is very likely that these students face charges potentially as an adult. And if some of them are 18 years old, then they will be charged as an adult if this goes that far. We do know that some disciplinary action was taken. We don't know what exactly, but in the superintendent's statement, it said that they did act based on the information that they had at the time. We don't know if that was a suspension, expulsion, those details, of course, because it is dealing with students, we likely will not find out the details of.
Yeah, I took part in a panel discussion with law enforcement once, talking about like media, the law enforcement angle of it, and we were speaking to youth about cyber crimes, and how they're reported, how they are charged. And one of the things that I think a lot of people miss or just don't know, as we have come through time to this day and age, is that this could be, you think that you're just sending this out and it's for laughs. It could actually be like a child pornography charge because we're dealing with minors.
Exactly. And I do want to mention, too, we don't know who exactly reported this to the Lake Zurich Community Unit School District 95 administration, but credit to that person who did report it. Likely it was a student who came forward and spoke up. And I think that this really highlights the importance of, we say it so often, but if you see something, say something, because I can imagine that whoever did report it found it to be disturbing and knew that this was way more than just a joke.
Yeah, and then you have to wonder how far the images went. If they're posted, if people are sending them, you think that maybe it's just contained to your school, but one person sending it to somebody else, and it could end up on the web, the dark web. There's so many implications from something that, it may have started out as a little prank, but could go way further than that.
And it's scary, of course, things on the internet live there forever.
Exactly.
So it is just really terrifying to think that students who had no idea these images were being made of them are now out there. So we do know that the Lake Zurich School District is taking this seriously, as is the police department. We did reach out to the police chief and the deputy chiefs over at Lake Zurich PD asking if they would go on camera today to talk about this. They don't have anyone available, but they did say they are taking this extremely seriously and confirmed that they did receive that initial report from the school district on February 26th, that they are looking into this. And we do hope to learn more in the next several days.
Well, taking it seriously as they should. And I think Rich Wistocki is a wonderful person for you to speak to on this topic, as he's often going to many different schools throughout the country at this point to talk to students and parents about being aware of these types of things, avoiding these types of things, what to do if you are the one to, catch wind of something like this. I mean, there are so many conversations that maybe years ago people did not have to have with their children that are super important today, and that young people need to hear from someone, Rich, having been in law enforcement, that can really tell them how something that may have seemed innocent in their head could be way more than what they anticipated.
And Anita, you bring up such a great point when it comes to parents, is parents need to be aware and educated about how far this can all go. Social media, AI, it's so important to be educated. And as you mentioned it, Rich Wistocki, he has courses for students, for parents, for families, just to gain more knowledge about the possibilities, about how serious this is. Back to, this isn't just a prank or a joke. This could have some serious implications. And as we mentioned it, in this case, this is a criminal investigation now.
Yeah, they could stay with them for the rest of their lives, as this situation will stay with whoever was depicted in the AI images for the rest of their life as well. So we don't want to lose sight of that. There are victims in this too. So thank you so much for taking some time for us. I really look forward to your full story coming together this evening.
Thanks, Anita. Always great to chat.
All right. Take care on the road. It really is one of those situations, whether it happened at your child's school or you're the one watching this, happen in Lake Zurich and you are miles away. It's something that could happen anywhere to any group of students. And so it's really important that we have these conversations very openly with young people. Something may have seemed innocent online, that you could easily manipulate something through AI or whatever the means may be. And for many of us adults who didn't grow up with all of these different technologies, may seem kind of beyond what we're used to, but it's important that we have some knowledge of it, that we let young people know that if they should come across something like this, to immediately speak up, because these are very serious charges now that this could carry. And I don't know what their thought was in the beginning, but where this has gone, is a very serious situation. Let's take 2 minutes, regroup, and then we'll move forward from here, everyone. All right, welcome back, everyone. 1:16 right now, and boy, does the Chicago Sun-Times have a bombshell of an investigation on their hands here about city workers not paying fines. I mean, yeah, the rest of us, we're kind of like prodded and goaded into making sure you pay your fines, but city workers that owe millions. In total, $19 million in traffic tickets, water bills, various fines here, code violations, so many different things here. So let's go ahead and bring in Tim Novak, the investigative reporter who put us on to all of this. Thank you so much for your time. Tim, can you hear me? Okay, all right. Maybe he's having a problem hearing us right now. We're going to work on that behind the scenes here, see if we can bring him back in and get his sound on. But let me go over a bit of his reporting here. He says that a substitute teacher owes City Hall nearly $200,000 for building code violations, fines, and traffic tickets that were racked up over the past 25 years. 25 years. A convicted bank robber landed an entry-level job with the CTA Second Chance program, even though City Hall says he owes more than $136,000 in fines, primarily for drinking in public, selling individual cigarettes, so many different things that have now added up there. I mean, there's a list of issues here, one after another, for the past 17 years. There's a substitute teacher that owes $197,052. I mean, there's just a lot here that he's been able to reveal in his reportings, and we definitely wanted to get into this discussion with him. They're among 12,761 people who work for the city or its sister agencies, despite collectively owing City Hall more than $19.5 million. I believe that Tim is here now. Tim, can you hear me all right? Tim, can you hear me? Okay, I thought that I was hearing him for a moment, but it sounds like he still can't hear me. But there's just a lot to this. And one of the things that he's really keying in on is the fact that he believes in his reporting, that Mayor Brandon Johnson's administration has done little to make these city employees pay up. Again, for those of us who live in the city who aren't employed by the city, they have a means of coming after us for the amounts that we owe. Tim, can you hear me? Okay, all right. So we'll work on getting his audio straight. Let's take a quick break, see if we can work that out in the break, and then possibly bring him back. If not, we'll just move forward with our discussion and see if we can get to this another time. 2 minutes, we'll be back.
Tim, can you hear me now? move to your first window. Can you still hear me, Tim?
I can.
You're down.
Oh, God. Tim, can you hear me?
All right, just about 1:25, everybody, and I think we have all of our technological difficulties fixed with Tim Novak. Tim, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. Tell us about this reporting that you have about the city employees and fines.
Well, we've been looking at the amount of money the city has failed to collect from people as they're trying to raise taxes to fill the budget. And so we decided to look at how much money had been owed, and cities owed $8 billion by various people for over several decades. Then we decided to focus in on the city employees who are collecting paychecks while they owe the city money. So we found that there are 12,700 and some employees who owe the city money. Those are people who work for City Hall as well as its sister agencies, including CTA and Board of Ed. Those are the two largest employers with the most number of people that owe the city money. Altogether, the city employees owe more than $19 million, and 80% of that is owed by people who work for the Board of Education and the CTA.
I mean, that is wild to hear those types of numbers. What was going through you all's minds as you were telling it and finding out about more, you know, that A plus B was moving to C?
Well, it's as a taxpayer of the city, as a resident of the city, it's infuriating to find out that my tax dollars are being used to pay people who owe the city money. And the city says that everyone else needs to pay more money because we don't have enough money. So it's sort of a circular argument. Some of these people were hired owing the city money, which is I couldn't imagine applying for a job with an employer that I owed money to, yet alone getting that job. So there were a lot of puzzling situations that we uncovered.
Yeah, I mean, there are various ways of looking into this. And I was mentioning as we were working on your audio there, I mean, one of the employees that you kind of go back in time with, 25 years. So it's not even like this is, honestly, this isn't just a Johnson administration problem. This goes back decades.
Yes, it does. The numbers have gotten much larger. I mean, the amount of money that people owe the city has grown $1 billion under Mayor Johnson. And yes, some of these people owe money back decades. But the older the debt gets, the more unlikely it is to be collected. The city is now in the process of trying to put together a package and sell the debt, where some company would buy the debt for pennies on the dollar. The city would get some of that money, and then these people who bought the debt would try to collect the debt. But it's kind of, at this point, they haven't actually gotten to that point yet. But you wonder if anybody would actually even want to buy this debt, because if the city can't collect it, why does anybody else think they can?
And what was the highest amount owed by a particular person?
There's a substitute teacher who owes approximately $200,000.
Mm-hmm. That was the highest. I did see that.
Based on the numbers that the city provided to us.
Mm-hmm. So these are the numbers the city provided. I'm sure you're asking from the city for some comment to what is going on? How do we get these numbers? And what was their response?
The city wouldn't actually come to the phone, neither would the schools or the CTA. The CTA and the schools say that when they go to hire an employee, they don't bother to look to see if those employees owe the city money. And then the city the city spends a lot of time chasing these debtors, if you will. So then the city gets periodically gets payrolls from all these agencies, as well as the city departments, and they're matching the amount of money that's owed with the people they're paying, and then they find that these people owe all this money, and then the city is left to try to crack down on these people who owe the money, and their success rate is not that great.
So this definitely points to maybe a lack of thorough background checks.
Well, the city, Mayor Johnson owed money while he was running for mayor, and he had to pay that money back during the campaign, because he would not have been allowed to take office if he owed the city money. So we're hiring people that do owe the city money. We're paying them. It doesn't seem like that's an issue that the city wants to grapple with. The city has all the leverage in the world here, because the employee owes the city money and the city's paying the employee. So it's just sort of like, you can stop paying the employee, you can garnish their wages with a court order, which is not very difficult to obtain, or you could require the city employee to enter into a payment plan, and if they refuse, then you can find a new city employee.
The federal government would garnish wages, so it does seem kind of odd that they wouldn't have a similar setup for city government. Who is, and I do remember that issue coming up with Mayor Johnson when he was running for office. Who is now the highest ranking person, as you were tallying up these employees, that's on the payroll for the city that owes the city?
That's a very difficult question to obtain because the city wouldn't provide us with sufficient records to actually be able to do that. So we strictly focused on the amount of money that's owed by the employees, as opposed to like what their salaries are and who they are. Most of the city agencies, the high-ranking people in the offices, whether it's city council members or department heads, they're okay here. They're not. Those people are paid up. It's the mid-level to low-level employees that owe money.
And are you hearing already? I mean, we're seeing already online, but are you hearing already from alders or really anyone who is saying we need to fix this and offering up a possible solution?
I haven't heard from anybody today. We have talked to them in the past. We talked to them in the past when the mayor was proposing raising $1.5 billion in taxes, and that's when we started looking at this and said, well, you've got $8 billion of debts that are on the books that are not paid. So before you go look at raising $1.5 billion, maybe you should collect some of the 8. So we heard from aldermen back then, and the aldermen passed the budget that included a directive to the mayor to try to monetize this debt, if you will, by selling it to finance companies, individuals who would pay the city something. I'm just not sure that's actually practical. It seems that over the years, various city administrations, going back to Mayor Daley, have not cracked down on people who owe the city money.
Yeah. And, we saw Alderman Vasquez, for instance, online say that he wants to propose an ordinance to address this. I wonder what the wording of his proposed ordinance would be. So maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll see some movement. And it would be in large part because of your great reporting here.
Well, it seems like this isn't rocket science. If you're paid by your employer and you owe your employer money, I don't know what the employer holds all the cards here. If you want to keep working for me, pay me the money you owe me. It doesn't seem like this is a complicated situation.
Pay me what you owe me. It does not seem complicated, but few things that become complicated really are. Thank you so much for, again, your great reporting and for taking time to talk to us about it today here on Chicago Live. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. You take care.
Okay.
Really interesting. Very interesting. It's 1:35 though, everybody. Let's take a quick break, 2 minutes, and we'll be right back to proceed on with our conversations. Going back to AI and some of how it's being used. Again, there's good, bad, and ugly with AI, but we're going to get into a different thought process on a little bit of the behind the scenes for AI. Welcome back. 138 that we're approaching at the moment, and we want to get to a professor of anthropology and Asian studies for University of Puget Sound. That's Garth Barkan. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You have really put together a very interesting or thought-provoking, maybe that's probably the better term, thought-provoking outlook on AI that I don't know that a lot of people have really pondered on, and that is that AI has a Western world view. Describe that to me.
Yeah, thanks, Anita. I think there's a lot of conversation out there about AI biases. For example, you hear about hiring algorithms or facial recognition, and those are important concerns. They tend to be more focused on kind of domestic circumstances. And, you know, as a cultural anthropologist, I was interested in the worldview that happens when these tools are used by folks all over the world, right? There are billions of users. Most of them are not they're not in the US. And they're also not speaking to these tools in English. And so I was interested in trying to uncover some of the hidden kind of tacit assumptions and cultural biases that travel under these translations, including, you know, chat rooms and internet forums so they can speak slang as needed in a variety of languages. But that's a thin layer on top of what appears to be, you know, mostly a kind of a Anglophone or English language, you know, sort of cognitive set of processes. And so I first ran into this because a friend of mine in Indonesia was talking with or chatting with a ChatGPT about a family dispute that he was having, and the tool responds in perfect Indonesian, but it advised him to do things like setting clear boundaries from his family, you know, prioritizing his individual mental health, and even cutting them off, you know, if they didn't respect those boundaries. And not to say that's bad advice necessarily, but it's not the kind of advice you'd see in an Indonesian advice column, because family means something quite different for a lot of folks over there. And he immediately noticed that this is a different cultural worldview coming across in this advice. So the language itself was fluent Indonesian, but, you know, he told me he thought the values were from Silicon Valley.
You know, one of the things that was going through my mind as you were saying that, sometimes we get lost when it comes to AI and like, okay, how am I supposed to phrase what I'm looking for to get exactly what I expect? Do you think that it could be a result of that?
Well, it's honestly, I think you can try to make inroads to get these tools to think in different ways if you prompt them properly, to your question. But the origins of this are actually much more hard-coded. These tools are trained on trillions of tokens of data, and that data is predominantly English language data, and most of that comes from US sources. And what happens is they, you know, the weightings of the models, the way it makes associations between different kinds of ideas and phrases and those connections, what is sort of its epistemology or way of thinking and knowing about the world, that comes from that training data, as well as the kind of human reinforcement learning that they do afterwards. And that is specifically directed by folks at these AI companies. So the cognitive model that you see in these tools is not that malleable. They can give it certain amounts of international languages, Arabic, Indonesian, you know, Farsi, so that it can speak very fluently. But that's a small kind of sliver on top of the bulk of the training data, which mostly comes from these big kind of internet corpuses of information from countries like this one. Mostly this one.
So what, your friend who is Indonesian, what were that person's thoughts on that overall experience, and like would they continue to use AI, or did that kind of ruin their thoughts on AI?
Well, that's a good question, Anita. I think he probably will continue using it. As far as I know, he's continuing to use it. But he's regarding it with a level of skepticism now that he didn't before. Because the translation is so good, as I mentioned, that people kind of take these tools in and they're asking them for things like family advice. They're asking them to be companions. They're asking them, what should I do in these circumstances? And I think he's going to be doing that a little less, or at least he's going to be regarding it skeptically. But I'm an anthropologist of media and technology, and I used to study the television industry in Indonesia. And one big difference is that if somebody's watching a foreign television show that's translated or dubbed, they're aware that it's a foreign show, right? They know, oh, I'm watching, folks hanging out in New York, and I'm, it's interesting, but I understand this is a different cultural context that's just been translated. Whereas with these tools, people form real relationships with them. And I think that winds up making it different, especially since the language is so good. My concern is that a lot of this kind of set of cultural assumptions that these tools embody are going to travel below the radar for most folks.
So do you think that that's the biggest takeaway from this, is that we should all just approach AI with like healthy skepticism, or what would your biggest takeaways be from this?
Well, one of the biggest takeaways I have as a anthropologist is that this isn't an accident. It's not that these companies are intentionally saying, oh, we need to encode our own ideas and values. They do that to some degree, especially with the reinforcement learning. But for the most part, it's an economic decision. It's just too expensive to train these models with big corpuses of data from dozens and dozens of languages. They're competing with each other on different kinds of metrics. They want to do better on tests and reasoning, measures and benchmarks. And so creating these tools in ways that are culturally distinct and appropriate for different audiences around the world is really a secondary consideration. But I would say, I've heard, since I published an article about this recently, from folks, in just countries like Italy saying, like, I noticed this American lens as well. You don't have to go that far away. And it isn't even necessarily just, people are different in the United States as well. This is encoding a kind of what we call a sort of professional managerial class way of thinking about the world. So I think it would behoove all of us to regard its advice and way of thinking with that kind of degree of skepticism. These tools don't necessarily know what's best. They're looking at specific kinds of data written by specific kinds of people, and that may not be what's best for you in your own place where you live.
Yeah, and do you think that you were mentioning like people in Italy speaking up? Could there be a geopolitical view that AI is essentially or fundamentally used as an advantage for America?
That's a good question. I will say that the only models that really diverge from this trend that I'm talking about are Chinese models. There is one Russian model, but I don't know how far along that one is. It's not widely used. But there are a couple of Chinese models that are trained on significant quantities of Chinese language data. And so there you do start to see some differences. And I don't think it's an accident that China is developing those models. I think it reflects a kind of a geopolitical positioning. So I think that could be a consideration down the line. I don't think it's the intention I don't think it's like a US government decision, but I think the fact that US companies are really far ahead in the AI game does reflect kind of economic histories about the relationship of this country to other places in the world. And I am concerned that it will be a new vector of what some folks might call cultural imperialism, whether it's intentional or not.
Yeah, that is a really important aspect of, or perspective on it, a very important perspective on it. Thank you so much for being here on the show to talk with me today. I think there will probably be many more conversations about this as we move forward in society and all try to kind of wrap our brains around and figure out what to do with AI as it's changing. We're trying to understand it as it's changing.
Yes, thanks so much, Anita. I appreciate the opportunity.
Sure. Take care. Have a great weekend. It's 1:48. Let's take a 2-minute break and then we'll move forward with our program. $150 right now. We're staying in school, everybody. We're going to learn a little bit more. We're going from anthropology and Asian studies to now our economics class. And we have University of Chicago professor Stephen Durloff, who is joining me now. Thank you so much for being here on the show.
Well, thank you. It's very nice to see you.
So the jobs numbers are out from March. What are we finding?
Well, I think the headline is certainly a good sign. As the headline reads, there was substantial job growth in the last month, and that's by definition good news. You're going to couple that with the unemployment rate went down from 4.4 to 4.3%, and so that is certainly reason to be optimistic. However, there's some other things going on which should make one a little less so. First, the previous month, it turned out that the job losses were not 92,000, they were 133,000. So in fact, we've gone from a very substantial loss to a very substantial gain. Second, wage growth was quite unimpressive. In other words, it was at the lowest level since the move out of COVID. And so in an inflationary environment like this, that's obviously a significant thing to be worried about. Final thing is that labor force participation went down. And so there's some suggestion there that you may have more people that are discouraged from looking for jobs. So all of that's to say, I think the news is overall certainly better than expected. There's some reasons for short run concern. But I think I would say more generally that if you look across the last year, the economy with respect to labor markets has not done especially well. Wage growth has overall been unimpressive compared to the inflation rate. And job growth since April 2025 has been very weak. It's about 260,000 jobs added to the economy. At the same time, 380,000 jobs were added in health, which means that the rest of the economy was shrinking. And so if you look at sectors such as manufacturing, there was a reduction in employment. And all that is, I think, good reasons to have long-term concerns.
Let's break a bit of that down. When you said substantial loss to substantial gain, what attributes to that, you think?
Well, I think a couple of things. One of them is going to be just details of how the economy works. A major strike ended, and so which causes unemployment when it happens. If it ends, there's some shifting there. So that would be part of it. The second is that it takes time for the economy to adjust to things. You often can have the consequence of tariffs, the consequence of the uncertainty associated with with foreign policy, et cetera, rippling their way through the economy. And you can get overreactions as well as gradual reactions. And so I wouldn't attribute too much to the month-to-month fluctuations outside of the vagaries of the dynamics of the system. And plus, keep in mind, we don't know what the revised number is going to look like. In other words, the Bureau of Labor Statistics does an extraordinary job of surveying establishments to get estimates of levels of employment and the like. But those information are always revised because some of the information comes in after the announcement. And so last month there was a substantial loss. If you look at kind of the month-to-month changes, by and large, the revised numbers have been lower than the initial numbers. And so I suspect part of the 178 will turn out not to be there. But that's a conjecture, not a fact.
And what are we thinking in terms of the war in Iran, the implications there that we're seeing? Obviously, we're looking at March jobs numbers, and March, the very beginning of March was when this all started. So what type of impact are we seeing thus far?
I think one would be hard-pressed to say that there's much in the data that you can attribute to the Iran war per se. I think one reason for that is that the effects of the increases in oil prices, again, they take away some time to work their way through the economy. Where I think it is most likely we're going to see something is the next set of figures, which will tell us something about the rate of quits and the rate of hiring new hires at different firms. And there, the basic message for several months is that the labor markets are kind of frozen. You're not seeing massive layoffs. You're not seeing much new hiring, and you're not seeing people trying to move from job to job, which would typically quits are associated with better opportunities. So I think that the general freeze of the labor markets that we've seen for the last 6 months or so is still sitting there, and I think that it'll take time for the effects of oil prices to work through the employment numbers.
One of the things that President Trump has talked about in recent days when it comes to the economy is feeling like there will be, that his time frame on the war in Iran was 4 to 6 weeks. It looks like it may be somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks, but if that should stay on track, that the economy, whatever hits the economy takes during this time frame, would bounce back pretty quickly. Do you hold that view?
I don't, because I think that the effect of oil prices and having expensive inputs to production, that is to say energy, that's a first order harm to the economy. And so if the war wraps up in 2 weeks, but the Strait of Hormuz is still shut, that doesn't rectify the fact that world oil markets are in a state of turmoil. It's not going to rectify the fact that our gas prices have gone up by $1 a gallon and the like. And so ending the war in terms of declaring that objectives are met is one thing, and that will probably have some, as a conjecture, have some positive effect in isolation. On the other hand, if it's the case that the facts on the ground in terms of the shutting of the Strait of Hormuz, combined with the continuing stability of the Iranian government, combined with the failure to meet the objective of removing nuclear materials. Now, the objectives, of course, change every day as to what is being proposed. Those facts all are going to remain afterwards. So declaring victory or not, the fundamentals will still be, I think, somewhat concerning.
Yeah, it has definitely been a time of uncertainty and volatility. We've seen it a lot in the markets. The markets have been up and down, some days fully up and up by quite a bit, and other days that never get out of the red. So I think, you know, probably some of the statements that are put out are to put it in the positive territory, at least from a mental standpoint.
Well, I think that that's right. And to be clear, that's a perfectly appropriate action of a government. In other words, the managing of expectations is part of what the Federal Reserve does when it gives inflation targets, for example. It's doing that in order to try to coordinate beliefs about how the economy is going to go. So as long as the information is accurate, the efforts to stabilize beliefs, et cetera, that's standard operating procedure in any administration. But I think you brought up an extremely important point, and that is that these are times in which you have great uncertainty, not just about the facts of month-to-month shocks, but in terms of longer-run things with reference to policy. So the fluctuations in tariffs, the levels have gone up, they've gone down. There's been proposals, they've moved back, et cetera. A lack of clarity about the objectives of the war in Iran. All of the uncertainty associated with whether oil supply diminution is going to be reversed, et cetera. That creates an environment in which, by introspection, and it'll extrapolate to the whole economy, people are not willing to make certain types of decisions. In other words, in an uncertain environment, one's willingness to take risks is obviously the risks have greater consequences, and so investment is harmed by uncertainty. Consumer durable purchases, willingness to buy a house when you have a more precarious possibilities for your future income stream. All this uncertainty works against a vibrant economy, and I think that's the world we live in, and so that's why there's kind of these longer run reasons to have concerns.
All right, thank you so much, Professor Durloff. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you again soon, I'm sure.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, have a great weekend. Everyone, it's just about 2 o'clock. Give us 2 minutes, and then we'll be back to set you up for where we're going in the next hour. Okay, it's just about 2:02 right now. Let's talk a little bit about where we're going in the 2 o'clock hour here. We are going to get an update on the Artemis mission. Artemis 2, thus far, has been a terrific test flight, right? It is a test flight so that we can move forward with space exploration. And so My goodness, so much anxiety just to get to the day that they would have their launch, and we all sat and watched, and it was a successful launch, and then you wait for that next big moment, and look at the image we see now. Oh my goodness. We're going to get plenty of great images. Again, 10-day mission that these 4 astronauts are on, and they're going to, have a wealth of information when they come back down, when they splash back down to Earth, what stories they will have to tell. We are just rooting for them every step of the way, but we're going to get an update on their mission a little bit later on in the hour from NASA, okay, from the experts themselves, the ones who sent them there, who dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's to get them there. So we'll hear about that. It should start around 2:30, so hopefully it's right on time. We'll listen to them. Also, of course, it's Good Friday for all who observe the Holy Week, and we're going to hear a little bit more about Pope Leo marking Good Friday. We're going to listen. The Illini fans are hoping it's a good Saturday, okay? We are going to check in with Cassie Carlson about, her crazy travel to get from NFL coverage over to NCAA coverage now, from Arizona to Indianapolis, but we're going to talk a little bit about the Illini, her team, her alma mater, making it to the Final Four, and just how big of a moment this is for the school. And again, hoping that they do well in this next round and that they're moving forward. But of course, they still got to get to game day. And so we're going to talk to her about that. It was really cool seeing just the players and the whole community come out to usher the players onto the bus as they were getting ready to leave, and the fanfare around them like they're already in the NBA, but they deserve to be celebrated for what they've done already. Getting this far is a first for many years, I think since 2005, so they deserve to be celebrated for getting to this level, and I'm sure everybody is hoping that they move right on, but they do have a formidable foe, so we'll talk about that with her coming up in just a bit. But I want to start with the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, approving the second GLP-1 pill. No longer just an injection, but a pill to treat obesity. This is coming from Eli Lilly, and Dr. Christopher Chapman with Rush is joining me now to give us more information about this. Thank you so much for your time today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
How do you think it fundamentally changed things where it comes to GLP-1s to even go from having injectables to having a pill? This would be the second, but just that transition in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, we're in basically like an evolution of weight management beginning in 2022 with these injectable medicines that about, the GLP-1s, but a lot of people still have needle aversions, and so coming out with these oral medications will help increase access for people who may not want to do injection-based therapies. So transitioning to orals is something that many people are used to taking for other conditions. So having that as an option will decrease barriers and make it more available for patients.
Mm-hmm. And will it be just as effective?
Well, that's the thing. If you look at the data in terms of efficacy, meaning weight loss, the injectables are still king. So if your goal is to maximize your weight loss, tirzepatide is probably going to be your best bet. But that being said, the oral medications are still very, very good. The trials for the newest one, which you mentioned was just approved 2 days ago, it showed demonstrated weight loss of around 10 to 12%. To put that in context of other oral therapies that were previously FDA approved, it was about 5 to 7%. So we're doubling the amount of weight loss you can expect with an oral medication with this new one.
What does it say about society? I mean, society has always been in a rush to lose weight, but this is not just losing weight. We're also possibly treating a lot of health issues through these GLP-1s. So what do you think it says about society that we are moving so quickly to get from one to another to increase how effective they are moving forward?
Well, I mean, I think this is a complex disease and a complex situation. So I think a lot of it, we still have to reframe that this is obesity, weight management is a chronic disease. And I think there are a lot of things that we need to work on in terms of diet, in terms of how we eat, how food is being ultra processed, that are making it more challenging for your average American to lose weight. So if the food that's available is designed in a lab to make it be highly palatable, meaning you want to eat it, and is taking out the fiber and water so you end up feeling hungrier faster, that's a big challenge, right? And so if we can help provide ways to combat that with these medications, I say that's a major win. But yeah, it's a challenging environment right now, given the food environment and the food availability based upon where people live. So I think these are still great options, but as a society, it's a big challenge. And the thing that's really exciting is that, you know, for the first time since 2022, with the advent of these medications, we've seen obesity numbers decline in America. So we were on a trajectory where we were by 2030 going to be 50% of Americans were going to be obese. Now we've actually turned the tide a little bit against that battle. So I think as a society, as America, we're making progress.
Does it make people less inclined to do the things that you mentioned, the healthy eating, the gym, does it make people less inclined to go that route with more things being available to maybe skip around some of that?
Yeah, so that's a challenge, and I think that's why we have to be very careful about using online teledoctor medicines, right? Because at the fundamental issue, when you think about weight management, it still really depends on the three fundamental things, which are behavior change, diet, and physical activity. If you don't bring all those things in, you will not have long-lasting, durable outcomes. And so that's why in our program, we focus in so much on bringing that aspect into care. If you could just take medications, they may work, but you're going to become extra reliant on that. And if you stop them, then you're going to have a high risk for weight regain. So yes, these should be seen as jump-starting tools to help get people started, not as shortcuts, though.
Very, very good. Very well said. Let me ask you this. Few people would think that anyone would get addicted to injecting themselves with a GLP-1, but you could totally see that happening more so with a pill. Is that a fear? Is that a concern in the medical community?
Yeah, I think we have to be concerned about that, because we've seen when some people, even with injectables, right, you kind of say, hey, maybe that's a little bit too much. We've actually had to decrease the dose for certain people because they've lost too much weight and they don't want to come off it. And we have to have a challenging discussion for that. When you bring down the barriers to entry, which is the oral pills, you have to be even more vigilant for that. And so I do think, again, going online and having the pills just show up in your mailbox can be a relatively dangerous thing. I'm all for improving access to care, access to your providers and physicians, but you have to have your team available to help make sure we don't go too far one way, and to be honest, to help manage complications or side effects along the way, because a lot of times you may have to dose adjust based on how your tolerance is. And so I do think having that team is really important, and that includes making sure that, hey, we have to say maybe you're on too much of a dose, maybe we need to back off a little bit. So that active management is really critical.
Who would be the primary candidate that would be prescribed a GLP-1 today?
Yeah, so if you look at the rates, it's approved for obesity and overweight people with comorbidities. So a BMI is not the ideal tool, but it's what we have for right now. So typically we recommend people with a BMI over 27 with a weight-related comorbidity, whether it's diabetes, high blood pressure, something like that, sleep apnea, fatty liver disease, or a BMI over 30. So those are kind of the baselines in terms of who should be considered for these therapies.
And you mentioned complications, side effects. Let's go over some of those. Let's start with the complications.
Yeah, the things you really want to watch out for most commonly are going to be GI side effects. That's nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation. Those are going to be common ones that you're going to be seeing very, very frequently. And those are really dose dependent. So as you go to higher doses, you're going to see more and more symptoms come up. You do need to be on the lookout for things like pancreatitis, so inflammation of the pancreas, gallstone disease, so gallstones can develop within your gallbladder. You can be watch out for mood changes. That's something that can happen as well. And there are rare reports of like eye issues that you want to be cognizant of too. So if you have changes in visions, you also have to be aware of the contraindications, which like if you have a history of certain thyroid cancers or family history, then it may not be a good option as well. So knowing not only what the side effects are going to be, but what also the true contraindications are important too.
Yeah, and in discussing these things with patients, what is that like? I mean, what are you trying to, in order to make sure that this is a successful process for someone? What are the things that you're trying to get across to them?
Yeah, so in our clinic, a lot of patients are coming in and they want it. So that's very different in typical weight management if you're dealing with like surgical procedures where you have to say, a lot of patients don't want true surgery. But with the medications, it's less invasive. So many people are coming in wanting it. So it's not really an art decision, or it's not really a discussion about, hey, should you do it or not? It's more, how do we do this safely? And so that becomes the bigger issue. And that means we have a thorough history in terms of their medical problems, their family history, but also we want to see how engaged they are in making some of these lifestyle and dietary changes. So we really want to understand, what are their average meal likes? Are they meal skipping? Are they having fast food, processed foods? Are they able to go to the gym? Do they have that desire or ability, baseline fitness level to do that? So we really want to make sure that we're, again, hitting those 3 points about physical activity, behavioral changes, and nutrition. And so if they're not hitting those things, yes, we can prescribe this, but we'll be worried that they won't have a good, durable outcome and be very, very medication dependent. And that's a very, very important discussion, because we do know if you stop the medications, you are at high risk for putting weight back on. And so a lot of patients do want to see if they can come off, but it's challenging if you don't have those 3 things set up and ready to go for increasing the durability of their response.
And what I'm hearing from you is not just a physical journey that someone is embarking upon, but a psychological one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The psychological aspect is so huge. And when you get benefit, when you see the patients who have had good outcomes, you see a lot change in terms of their physical or their psychological health and their mental state, because they're now able to do things that they couldn't before. I've had patients where I've done procedures or done medications therapy, and just increasing their mobility. For a grandparent to then be able to be mobile to go on a vacation, that's a big win, and that's a psychological gain. I've had patients who say something so simple as just racing their child to the car was, they started crying, and that's because of the mobility and the change. So there are these non-scale victories that can really change your psychological side too.
But are we thinking too that, and do you ever have, where you set a goal for someone, they meet it, and they kind of never think that it's enough?
Yeah, that happens a lot, and sometimes you talk about these numbers of what's expected. A 22% weight loss with tirzepatide, for example, is remarkable. That is just blow away from the prior data that's out there for medications. But sometimes they still feel that they want more, or they want it faster, right? And so that is where getting coaching and expectation setting about what we are trying to achieve and what we're capable of achieving is really important, because some of the psychological negatives we've seen is when people don't achieve their own personal goals, even if it's not realistic of what the data shows. So again, setting the appropriate expectations from day one is so critical to make sure that we set the right goals, and that patients don't get down on themselves for not achieving them, even though they may be doing very well compared to the studies that have even been published that led to FDA approval.
Well, it's been great chatting with you. Obviously, this is one of those categories of evolution in society that I'm sure is going to have us having these conversations more and more often as new things pop up. Thank you so much for your time today. We really do appreciate it. I think it's really important for people to hear from those who are educated in the field who can give them the information they need.
I really appreciate the time today. Have a great one.
All right, you too. 2:17, give us 2 minutes, and then we're getting to Cassie Carlson so we can talk about the NCAA and the Illini. .220 right now that we're approaching, and we've got to get out to Cassie Carlson. She has been a woman on the move, always a woman on the move, but really, really on the move this week. And Cassie, I know you're going to be covering the NCAA, covering your alma mater. So do you finally get to Indianapolis and like yell out ILL, or are you trying to keep composed?
We're starting voyage to get to Indianapolis. So I'm currently on I-65 driving south to Indy, and it's been quite the journey because, as you know, we've been in Phoenix all week for the NFL owners meeting. And yesterday, due to all the storms in the Chicagoland area, we were hoping to get home. Our plan was to leave at 4 a.m. this morning to drive to Indy so we could make it to the open practice that Illinois had. And then we had a 7-hour delay yesterday for our flight, and eventually got up in the air, and I'm getting all the Fox notifications about the storms, and there's all these ground stops. I'm like, how are we going to land? And we, in fact, did not land in Chicago. We ended up getting diverted to Madison, so we stayed overnight in Madison, got an Uber from Madison to Chicago this morning, quickly went home, unpacked, repacked, and now we are on our way to Indy.
This is what I call dedication to the job, lady.
I know. I was like, how quickly can I, like, I'm not the most efficient packer, but luckily, since we're driving, I didn't even try to put it all in a carry-on. I brought my biggest suitcase and threw in a bunch of options.
Oh my goodness. The true life of a sports anchor right here that everybody is finding. See, they think it's all like glamorous and you just show up, you're at the sideline and, you're interviewing the owners of the teams and all of these things, and they don't hear about this part of it.
No, but it's part of the fun. We were talking, we're like, all right, we travel a lot, as you know, for the Bears. And I'm like, this has never happened to me before. It was definitely one of the worst travel days that I've ever had. But it adds to the fun of the story. And I'm like, all right, probably at the end of the day today, we'll be able to laugh about what happened and how we did survive and we're in Indy. And now we can focus on the Final Four.
Yeah, you'll at least laugh to keep from crying about it all. That's for sure. So tell us about your expectation for this matchup.
Yeah, well, I think, there's a lot of people saying that these two teams met earlier in the season and UConn won that game. But I think the thing that Illinois has done is they've totally shifted their identity. And you look at that game and who is starting that game, who is getting the primary minutes, and it's not who is leading this team at this point. And Keaton Wagler, the freshman All-American, is really the perfect example of that. Someone who I think he got like 14 minutes in that game, and now he's become the star of this team, and the offense really runs through him. And you're seeing just how they have shifted in that sense. And then I also think Illinois going into the tournament, the question was not about their offense. They have one of the top most efficient offenses in the country, but it was about how their defense would show up. And just in their first 3 games, the way they've put on their defensive shows and were able to get stops when needed, that's going to have to carry over into the Final Four. Then there's also all the intangible things that go on in the Final Four that you don't know how they're going to play a factor, and that's, you know, they get in and do their stuff yesterday with the media, going through all the rounds. They have an open locker room. They have open practice. It's different. I think Kylan Boswell was talking about how they're playing in Lucas Oil Stadium. So they're playing a basketball game at a football stadium, and you can kind of hear like the echo, and that place is going to be packed with thousands upon thousands upon thousands of fans. And so it's just a different experience as a whole when you get to these main events. And so when all the hoopla around it, pomp and circumstance, how are they going to be able to lock in, especially when you're going up against a UConn team who's coached by Dan Hurley? I think this is his 4th Final Four in the last 5 years or so. And they, you know, they've won national championships. Illinois has the pressure on them because they never have. And so when it happens only once every 21 years, I think we'll see how they respond to feeling that pressure, but also hopefully enjoying the moment.
Yeah, and do you think this is one of those times when skill could outweigh experience, or that experience could trump the skill that Illinois has?
Well, Illinois, no doubt about it, has a ton of skill, and UConn has the experience. I think, you know, they go hand in hand. One thing I'll never forget, it was Mike DeCourcy does bracketology for Fox. We had him on our Chicago Sports Tonight, and he said one thing you can't do in the tournament is win if you don't have NBA players. And Illinois has NBA players on it, and I think the interesting thing is, you know, there's all these different ratings and stats that go into a season, and there's different publications or whatnot to grade just how good each team is. And KenPom is one of the premier ones that people look at, and Illinois has one of the most efficient offenses in the country for KenPom. And going into the tournament, their defense wasn't in the top 20, but now in the tournament, it is in the top 20. And most people will tell you that you have to have both offense and defense in the top 20 of KenPom if you're going to be able to win a tournament. And so I think that Brad Underwood has a way of focusing his players. You know, they had an early exit in the Big Ten tournament that people were wondering how they were going to adjust and respond coming into the NCAA tournament. We've seen just a totally different team. And a lot of college basketball is getting hot at the right time. And it's not that Illinois was never hot throughout the season, because they had a really good year. But I think refocusing that, being able to enjoy it, I think they've had fun along the way, which I think is important because it does come in these high-pressure environments. We've really seen the personality of the team emerge a lot. And so I think we'll all see that come into play tomorrow night. And, you know, these games are close a lot of times. When Illinois and UConn met in the Elite Eight, that was 2 years ago, in 2024 in Boston, we were there, and, you know, we traveled like the night before, and it was just like Illinois couldn't stop UConn at all. They went on a 30-0 run, and I don't think we're going to see that from this Illinois team. I think they're much more poised to win a game.
Uh-oh. I think she may have hit a spot there as she's driving that kind of challenged her signal. One of the things I was going to, ask her about when she was talking about the offense and the defense and how everyone kind of knew that Illinois had this outstanding offense, and you look at these players and going into the tournament, but it really did seem like maybe people didn't give their defense enough credit going into even that Houston game. Like everyone said, okay, well, it's going to be Illinois' offense against Houston's defense, and you see what happened. I mean, they were able to advance, and of course, maybe that depends on how you look at what it takes to win the game, but that they were able to advance. And so I wanted to be able to talk to her about that. One of the shining moments Of course, shining moment. We'll hear a lot of that. Whoever wins the tournament will hear one shining moment. But anyway, so one of the shining moments, I think, of the tournament thus far has been for those of us who watch the Big Ten, we're located in Big Ten country, is watching these teams really battle it out and move forward. She was just talking about the Big Ten tournament, which of course we watched right here in the city of Chicago, there at the UC. And now you're seeing these teams like, I mean, we're at the Final Four and like, okay, here's Illinois. All right, didn't have the run that they thought they would in the Big Ten tournament, but here they are now, stepping up when it counts. Look at Michigan. You know, I mean, we watched Michigan, and of course, everyone thought Michigan had a lock on the Big Ten tournament, but comes Purdue, you know, so now we see them in the Final Four. So it's really a testament to the Big Ten and these big dogs in the Big Ten that we've gotten to this place. One other thing that I was kind of thinking about as Cassie was talking was the fact that she mentioned they are playing this basketball game in a football stadium. And you know, I mean, she just came back from Arizona speaking with, Kevin Warren and McCaskey, and you think about the fact that a part of their argument for having a domed stadium is so they can have moments like this one day, so that they can host tournaments like this one day, which they cannot do right now at Soldier Field. That has been a part of their argument all along. So I think that Cassie is back with us. Cassie, I was just kind of going over the intersection of your comments there that, you know, you mentioned the fact that they're going to be playing at a football stadium, which is a part of the argument from the Bears about needing a domed stadium so that they can host these moments.
Yeah, they are really cool. Can you hear me first off?
I can.
Some dead spots on the way down to Indy. You know, I've been to one Final Four before. I covered a Final Four my first job. I was working in Lubbock, Texas. That one was actually at U.S. Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, which we know Kevin Warren was leading that project. And so it is one of the coolest events, and just talking about location-wise, and this is a good example of, you know, Illinois, it's 2 hours away from Champaign, it's 3 hours away from Chicago, you have Michigan, so people from Detroit are going to be driving down, and just the opportunities that are around. And I think of, you know, Indy hosts a lot of big events, sporting events, because of the way their downtown is planned, and they have hotels everywhere. It's easy to walk, it's accessible, and so I think that's the vision for the Bears, to be able to do the same thing. And we got the update this week from Kevin Warren and George McCaskey that they have a new timeline to make a decision on that. It would be late springtime, early summer, and we know the Illinois legislative session is closes on May 31st. And so the hope is that they'll be able to make a decision. As they both said, there is not a deal on the table right now to be made, so they can't really make a decision. They're waiting on things from both sides, but definitely part of the vision of wanting to build a domed stadium, whether it be Arlington Heights or Hammond, Indiana, which is funny because I just drove past Hammond, Indiana a couple hours ago on my way here on the Skyway. And so, yeah, there's still progress that obviously needs to be made in order for them to come to that conclusion of where they want to be. But, yeah, this is the vision, and they're really cool events. As I kind of heard you talking about the orange and blue that's going to be out there. I know Illini fans are going to travel.
Oh, yeah.
Steve Brown, who was on that 05 team, said it's so important to just geographically be close to where your school is, where your alumni base is, and so I think that could have a huge advantage for the Illini this weekend.
Well, we certainly are hoping all the best for them. Do you want to give us your spread? What do you think that this is going to end up at tomorrow?
I have a little bias in there. But actually, Illinois, they are favored. So that's something of note, where they are favored going into this matchup against UConn. I think it's like a 2-point spread. So I'm putting my money on the Illini for sure. Score-wise, that one's a little bit tougher. I'm going to go 73-68 Illinois.
Okay. All right, 73-68 Illinois. Well, you know what? You've had them going further than a lot of people, so I'm sticking with you and your belief here, and so that might translate into the score as well. Cassie, you be safe on that road, okay?
All right, thanks, Anita. Have a good weekend.
Okay, I hope you get to sneak in a nap somewhere. 2:32, everyone. I mean, she has been on the go. So it was already planned to kind of be a crazy weekend for her, but it just Mother Nature made it even more crazy. But she's got it all worked out. So it's a fun time for sports fans, and even for those who do the job of telling us all the things going on in sports. But it's definitely a busy time as well. It's about 2:33, so let's get a quick break in, and then we'll bring in our next guest. .235, everyone, and let's take you to Rome, where we have quite a moment for all to take in, to see, wow, look at all of those people there. Of course, it is Good Friday for all who believe in Holy Week. That's Christians, and there are many denominations who are taking part in services today, and there's the Pope right there carrying the cross. These crowds have gathered outside of the Colosseum for the Way of the Cross, which commemorates the final hours of Jesus' life, from his death sentence to taking up the cross to his crucifixion, death, and burial. The procession ends outside the Colosseum atop the Palatine Hill. Oh my goodness, look at these crowds that have gathered there. So Pope Leo will personally carry that wooden cross through all 14 stations of the Way of the Cross at the Colosseum today. For the first time in decades, this will be the first time that a pope carries the cross to every station. Some people have said it's an important sign because the Pope represents a spiritual leader in the world, and for his voice that everyone wants to hear. This will be quite the moment that we are taking in here. Pope Leo told reporters this week outside of a retreat that he will carry all of this suffering in his prayer. It's important for many who have gathered there. Oh, the lights. I mean, it really gets you just to take that view in. Pope Leo is 70 years old to be taking the cross along this journey, but it means so much, you know. And when you think of the suffering that it represents, it maybe means even more that he will be taking it to all 14 stations at 70 years old. A little background, though, they say that Pope Leo is very physically fit, an avid tennis player, and a swimmer. And before becoming Pope, he would work out regularly at the gym near the Vatican with a plan of being able to do even more one day. And so again here, we're just watching quite the moment for the Catholic Church, just beginning right there as the Pope begins to carry the cross, as all of these cameras are up and people are getting this image to remember forever. The way of the cross, 14 stations. Pope Leo will carry the cross to each one. This marking Good Friday. And then on Holy Saturday, the Pontiff will preside over Easter Vigil rites at St. Peter's Square and lead Roman Catholics into Christianity's most joyous celebration, marking Christ's resurrection as well. Of course, before Easter Sunday, where the Pope will celebrate an open-air Mass in St. Peter's Square before delivering his Easter message and offering the traditional blessing to the city of Rome and to the world. Again, this just beginning here, the stations for the Way of the Cross at the Colosseum on Good Friday. The first for Pope Leo in this capacity, and thousands have gathered to be a part of this moment for the Catholic Church as a whole worldwide. Beautiful to see these moments. They are going to continue on. Of course, as I said, the Pope will be making his way to and through all 14 stations, just beginning right now. We'll continue to monitor that. But as it is now, just about 2:40, we are also monitoring the stream from NASA, as we have been hoping for the best for our astronauts who are going further than any humans before. Let's listen into their stream now as they give an update on the Artemis 2 mission.
This particular branch. The second branch is ready to go. And when I say no mission impacts, we're able to perform the rest of the burns across the mission without doing any regulation, what we call blowdown mode. In other words, there's enough helium pressure in the tanks itself that we can push out the oxidizer and the fuel without needing to regulate or require more helium from the helium tanks. So overall, our redundant capabilities are providing the coverage that we need as we move across the mission. Let's see. Yesterday also, I think somebody asked this question, but the crew was able to exercise. And I said yesterday, I think we talked a little about any performance implications on the guidance navigation control system and talked to our experts, and there were no implications on that. So performed as expected in terms of what we thought the forces that would get imparted when the crew does the flywheel, that we addressed that very clearly through our design. And I'm happy to see that performance held up very well. Let's see, I have, I guess, my own couple images that Lakeisha showed you some, and I have a couple of my favorites. So the first one is just awesome to see from our spaceship. Out the window, our beautiful home planet, the Earth. I believe Reed took this picture, and it just brings a lot of great emotion to me, and to see that picture being taken. I know there's a lot of other pictures that we're going to see that are just going to be outstanding and fantastic to be able to enjoy. And then the second one, I had not seen the crew in a while. I've obviously heard them, but to see them in the interview, I do believe that I think Jeremy is too comfortable that way. I'm not sure he's working that hard, so I'm going to have to check to see if he's doing anything more than just laying there on the side here. But great to see the crew, great to see their smiling faces, and hear them talk about their experience already so far. And I can't wait to talk to them when they land home back Earth. And I think that's it for me today.
All right, thank you. We will go ahead and start our Q&A session. If you're in the room, please raise your hand if you have any questions. And if you're on our phone bridge, please press *1. We'll start right here with Mark in the back.
Hey, hello, everyone. Good to see you all again. Mark Strassman with CBS. John, I want to ask you a question, if it's okay. There are millions of Americans, unlike people in this room, who are just catching up with the fact that there's a moonshot going on this week. Who knew? So I want to just sort of scoot ahead to Monday's milestone, the lunar flyby. Why does it matter? What do you hope to get out of it?
So it matters because, the whole point is to go back to the moon. The whole point of this mission is a campaign to get back to the moon. And the being able to see with human eyes the lunar surface is a huge milestone, right? And that just articulates the point, that we're going back to the moon. We're going to stay there, right? And so this is the first step towards that. We'll obviously build upon that. We'll get eyes on the moon, kind of map it out, and then continue to go back and in force.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll go next. I think for us, I'll just touch or follow on what Judd said, which is the building blocks. We're building a transportation system. And to have a reliable and robust transportation system, you need to test flight the transportation system. And I think that's really important. We've demonstrated on Artemis 1 with uncrewed capability. We've added a very important aspect of it, which is the crewed capability. And that crewed capability enables us to really understand how, when we have people in the cabin, how the systems operate. And adjustments we need to make. You hear a lot of these kinds of things that over the loop, minor adjustments we need to do. Certainly engineering expertise and the design we put in has a certain understanding. But until you put people in the mix and you operate it and really understand what you need to do to operate in this kind of environment, you don't get that until you're in that environment. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, part of what we're doing is the technical aspects and what we are learning from taking ourselves around the moon. The other part, obviously, is what you talked about, which is capturing the imagination of people, right? And we have far more engagement than we had hoped to have, and we hope that it will increase as we continue to take further and further steps into this mission.
Okay, we'll take our next question here in the front, and then Eric next.
Hi, Mark Kirkman with NSF. This is probably for both Judd and Howard. I'm very fascinated, we just saw some imagery of the waste dump, and I'm very fascinated with the prediction of needing the correction burns versus what's going to be the reality. I was wondering, because there's so little available material on this on the subsystems, at least publicly available material. Can you summarize the things other than the waste dump that would affect or perturb the trajectory? What vents off of this vehicle as opposed to what we know from shuttle like Fest dumps and stuff like that? And were you surprised that you didn't need this burn? Are we tighter in the prediction than is the reality tighter than the prediction was so far?
Yeah, so two parts to that question. First, so the major contributor to dispersions is what we call them, basically unplanned little tiny jets, are the carbon dioxide scrubbers. So they vent overboard, right? Vent the CO2 overboard. And so that's it's supposed to be a non-propulsive vent, but it has some propulsion to it, just like the urine vent has a little bit of propulsion to it. And so that causes minor trajectory deviations. Were we surprised that the orbiter correction or the trajectory correction was a no-burn? No, not at all. I mean, it's well within bounds. What happens really is we have a threshold by which if the required correction is low enough, that means that our fidelity on our lowest thrusting jets, our reaction control system, it's just not worth it, right? And so we'll just build up more errors and fix it on the next trajectory correction burn.
I think it's really good to see that we don't need these minor correction burns. It shows that our navigation performance and our ability to get ranging has been outstanding, and that these venting things, whether it's wastewater or the life support CO2 venting, doesn't cause the disturbances that are greater than what we would expect in terms of our performance. And I believe, I think we might have skipped maybe 2. I know we skipped 1 correction burn on Artemis 1 already. And so it's not unexpected. And so the flight control team gets an opportunity to determine when the delta V is very small, whether we actually need to execute that burn or not.
Okay, Eric, go ahead.
Eric Berger, Ars Technica. Yesterday, Howard, you made a comment about you wanted a little more humidity in the capsule, I think during the briefing, which as a Houston resident is always kind of funny to hear. But just now you mentioned that the humidity level was up and good. And maybe you could just talk about sort of the comfort in the cabin. I think there have been some questions about temperature. So kind of what temperature swings and what's the ambient temperature and sort of crew cabin comfort level?
Yeah, I'll let Judd start with the crew cabin temperature, and I can follow up. Why don't we try that?
Yeah, so we had a cabin temperature that was in the mid 70s when we first got on orbit, and then we turned off some of the shell heaters, and the temperature dropped around about 65 degrees or so. And then we understood that the crew was not comfortable at 65 degrees. So we turned some of those shell heaters on. We lowered some cabin fan speeds to try to adjust that. And we've gotten it up into the low 70s, mid 70s right now. And as far as humidity, I think Howard mentioned this yesterday, but the carbon dioxide scrubbers really actually want some, a good amount of humidity so that they work effectively.
Yeah, so I'll answer, we've got a lot of different kind of knobs to turn to enable the comfort level or temperature changes. For example, the pressure vessel heaters that Judd's talking about, we can go up to 85 degrees. We're not anywhere close to that yet. So that's one knob, and we have other things where we could slow down the coolant loop speed as well in terms of how we trade the heat or the coolant that's necessary to go into the cabin as well. So a lot of different options are available. And overall, keeping a steady state relative to humidity in the cabin allows us to make sure we get good readings also from the CO2 and the CO2 scrubbing associated with that humidity.
I do want to remind us, though, that this is a part of what we want to do. We want an opportunity to be able to exercise these knobs that Howard is referring to so that we have a good characterization of the system going forward. We understand the capability of the spacecraft and its systems. This is what we want.
Yep.
Okay, we'll take our next question right here.
Thank you, Mark Carreau with Aviation Week in Space Technology. I wanted to refer back to the external survey you did with solar array cameras of the Orion and the service module, just to see if you saw anything initially of concern that would have been damage to the exteriors, or it looks good.
Yeah, I have not personally seen the photos from our survey. I did watch it a little bit on TV as well, but I have not heard anything that we're concerned about, Mark. I think we will continue to go to fine detail and look at the pictures. Our thermal protection system team is doing that right now, and they'll give me a report out tomorrow morning and show me anything that they found relative to any damage. But we don't see anything relative to the back shell panels or anything like that that would cause anything of concern based on a preliminary understanding.
Okay, Jackie, go ahead.
Hi, Jackie Waddles, CNN. Thanks for doing this. Quick question for Judd or Howard. I understand that during the latest communication with crew, they were talking about mopping up some kind of leak with towels. I'm not sure I understood exactly what was going on. I'd love some insight there. And then tomorrow, there's a couple of things on the schedule I'd love to hear more about with this manual piloting, flight test objective, and a selfie moment. I'd love some insight into what's going on there. Thanks so much.
Sure. So mopping up water. So it's not uncommon for whenever they're filling drink bags for a little bit of water to come out. The particular incident I think that the crew was talking about likely was as we were filling the contingency water bags. Whenever we had to fill them, there's a straw and a syringe, and you put a towel around it to make sure water didn't come out. There's also a feature of the potable water dispenser such that when you turn the valve off, it still dribbles out water for a little bit. So those are probably the couple of things that they're talking about. As far as tomorrow's objectives, manual piloting, so we're going to do two different modes. It's called 6 DOF and 3 DOF, 6 degrees of freedom and 3 degrees of freedom. It's different thruster modes of how much control that you have in all the axes and translation. So we're just it's another test objective of how the vehicle handles. And selfie, I think that's probably a selfie of the Orion vehicle with the cameras.
Yeah, very similar to what we did on Artemis 1, where we had, I think, the biggest selfie stick in the world and allowed us to take all those beautiful pictures. We were originally intended to have those solar array cameras do the survey that Mark was referring to that we did today. But because we were performing so well that we were able to use one of the arrays as a selfie stick, and so that was terrific.
All right, we'll head to the phone bridge for a few questions. Our first question there is from Joseph Howlett with Scientific American.
Hi, Joseph Howlett here, Scientific American. I'm curious about how the crew is faring on board, how their spirits are. I was surprised that they only got to talk to their family now, and how did those conferences go?
Yeah, so we'll say a little bit about that. They are in great spirits, and they are really excited about the opportunity to be there and what's going on. Obviously, they've been very, very busy the first couple of days, especially leading up to translunar injection. But now that we've gotten through that, that's why there's been an opportunity for them to do things like have a conversation with their families. And in terms of the great things that are going on, they did get awakened this morning with a song called In a Daydream by the Freddie Jones Band. So there's a lot of fun things going on in addition to a lot of hard work.
Okay, our next question on the phone bridge is from Micah Maidenberg with the Wall Street Journal.
Hey, I just had a couple of quick ones for Judd. Judd, I wanted to make sure I understood this lunar science observation period. So during that 6-hour period, that's when Orion's traveling around the far side of the moon for the entire stretch of that, or not? And do you know approximately when on Monday that 6-hour period begins, like in Eastern or Central Time? Thanks so much.
Yes, I can get that for you. As far as it's pretty much the entirety of that day, we'll be able to see the moon. And so what we're doing is we're doing visual observations, taking camera shots of the moon and the like. As far as when we start it, it's going to be UTC of around 1830 UTC on the 6th. So subtract 5, that's 1330 Central Time, and it'll be going on for most all of that day, right? Because they'll be at their closest approach and pretty close thereabouts during that entire time.
Okay, we'll take one more question on the phone bridge and then back here in the room. Our next question is from Marcia Dunn with the Associated Press.
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking this. Probably for you, Judd. NOAA just issued a geomagnetic storm watch, G2, coronal mass ejection. I know you guys are watching this throughout the mission, but will this one, it doesn't seem to be too bad, but will the crew be doing any precautionary measures because of this? And same question from yesterday. What's the latest revised numbers for closest approach to the moon? All the numbers and distances. Thank you.
All right. Yes. So we do have our radiation specialists that monitor all of that stuff, and if any of the sunspot coronal mass ejections happen from the sun, if they get to be a concern, then obviously we have mitigations, radiation shelters we put up. We do not expect that from this one, but we are continually monitoring that. As far as the updated numbers, I've got in statute miles. Should be 252,757 statute miles at our furthest distance from the Earth.
You're not going to convert that to nautical miles?
I think Howard's got an app for that.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take our next question right here. Go ahead.
Hi, Lauren Grutch from Bloomberg. Thanks so much. I just wanted to go back to that helium issue you were talking about earlier. You said you isolated that one branch. Just wondering if there's any concern if the second branch that you're relying on now has a similar issue, or is that redundancy you mentioned earlier, would that kick in for this problem? And then I've just been listening to the loops, and it sounds like there have been various, I guess, sensor issues or issues that are cropping up that don't seem to be an issue, like there was a suspected cabin leak, caution alarms that were coming on but then turned out to be false alarms. I'm just curious if you're sensing any pattern with that, or is that just random glitches for a test flight like this?
Yeah, I'll start. The other second branch on the oxidizer side is performing very well. No issues there. And so, again, that redundancy is there. And I said earlier, we do not need to regulate either on that line either for the rest of the burns. So I think both redundancy paths are in good shape. I would say, and I'll let Judd maybe talk some specifics. In general, Lakeisha said earlier, we're learning from this vehicle. And the caution warnings are based on, limits. And those limits are established jointly with the engineering team and the flight operations team. However, we have to operate in the environment. We have to, account for variations. And so I think sometimes we don't get it fully right. And when we don't, we correct it, and we'll make adjustments real time where we can. And if we need to, we'll make adjustments for the future as well once we get all the data. So I think all those things are part of the learning that we're doing, and certainly good to keep the team on their toes. And making sure that we're not only watching the systems very carefully, but we understand what the system is telling us, and we're adjusting based on what we understand from the data.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. So it's important to remember on Artemis 1, we didn't have a caution and warning system because we didn't have a crew on board that we needed to alert them about, right? And so while we did measure, all of the things we did, we obviously didn't have an ECLIS system on board either, so that we knew what the behavior of that was going to be. So this is all part of exactly what Lakeisha is talking about. This is learning. This is learning how the vehicle operates with the human system in the loop, right?
Okay, we'll go to Bill next.
Hi, Bill Harwood with CBS News. This is a question I get asked a lot, and I realize that it depends on who you ask how it gets answered. But, given all the Apollo missions, the satellites that we've had around the moon at much lower altitudes than these guys are going to be at, the question I get is what do human eyes really bring to this? Even if they've got nice cameras in their hands, they're a long way from the surface. 4,000 miles. What is this bringing that we don't already have from satellites and past missions? And I'm not saying that as a devil's advocate. I'm curious how you frame that in terms of the priorities of the mission. Thanks.
You want me to read first? I could start, yeah. So my understanding, talking with the scientists, is that your eyes, the human eyes, can resolve details much better than taking a picture and then looking at the picture, even with a telephoto lens. And so that observation that the scientists are looking for is really what's key. Even from as far as away as you mentioned, 4,000 miles, there are still things that the human eye can pick up with granularity that are important to the science community. Now, I can't talk about what those specific things that the science community is looking for, but that's my understanding.
Yeah, I think I'll try to maybe repeat what I said earlier. When I tell people this, and it's really purely from a spacecraft side, when we talk about wanting to have a moon base, wanting to have people on the surface of the moon or other planets, you need a way to transport people safely to that particular domain. And to me, it's very important that we do everything we can to understand and provide that capability in a robust and reliable way. And you have to walk before you can run.
Well, you heard it there, and we've been listening into a stream from NASA as they give an update on Artemis 2, on many of the things that have already taken place and the mission still ahead. They talked about blowdown mode, the crew being able to exercise yesterday, and that this is performing as expected. This test flight is performing as expected thus far, and they have gone through a couple of critical periods already. They were asked, if you were listening there, about a couple of things that have popped up along the way. They said there was a helium issue at one point in time, a sensor issue, but they kind of made those sound fairly nominal. They said we are watching the systems carefully and adjusting as needed in real time. One of the things that they talked about was getting some of the pictures of Earth, as these astronauts get further, these 4 astronauts get farther and farther away from the Earth, and it gets smaller and smaller the further they go. The lunar flyby that they did, and also what they said are the technical aspects of this mission versus what's capturing everyone's imagination. They, really also kind of crystallized the fact of just how big of a team effort this is, right? Like, our focus, of course, is on these 4 astronauts who have risked their lives to go up for this historic moment for the country and really for the world. But also, how many other minds and eyes went into this mission, have gone into this mission to make it what it is. I mean, they even mentioned having a radiation therapist, of course, because they're going, into the unknown. So there's so many different people on this full team, more than the 4 astronauts who really go into making this a success. We've got Jeremy Hansen, who was there. You have Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and then it's just amazing to watch what they're able to do here. One of the things that Jeremy Hansen mentioned was the fact that they actually had to clear off some of the areas on the Artemis, on the Orion, because their faces were up against it so tight. That, of course, they're breathing on it, and so it kind of got fogged up. But they themselves, if it's our imagination going wild right now, imagine if you're on the actual mission and they're kind of looking out, watching themselves get further and further away from Earth, their home, where the whole family is. I mean, just really amazing things that we are watching here for this particular mission. They were woken up this morning to John Legend's Green Light. As they woke up this morning, and some cheers from their fellow teammates at NASA. 4 humans going 250,000 miles away. Wow. It's just a wow moment that we are in the midst of right now. Orion is going to zoom 4,000 miles beyond the moon before turning back, and it'll be like a figure 8 that they'll be making. So we're all going to be seeing some things we have not seen in a very long time, 50 years, that we have not seen, and some things that no one has seen. They are going beyond what we have even seen before, period. So our prayers are still with this team, and it was good to be able to listen in to an update on how things are going thus far. We certainly hope that everything continues to go well. It's 3:05 though. Our next guest is on the line. So we're going to take a quick break, everyone. I'll set you up for where we're going in this final hour here and get to our next conversation next. Welcome back, everyone. 3:08 right now. We've got a lot to get to even in this final hour here of Chicago Live. Before we turn you over to the 4 o'clock, we're going to speak with our own Joni Lum. She has a great special that's airing later tonight, and we're going to get some details on that, a preview, if you will. We're going to talk about the weather. It's been holding up for today, and so we're so glad, especially for the Sox fans, because you had to wait one extra day for the home opener, but they're getting that in today. The game started at 1:10 this afternoon. We're going to talk about the University of Wisconsin president and what's going on with that situation. Is he being asked to resign? Is he on the verge of being fired? We'll talk about that as well shortly. But first, we want to start with plans for a solar farm, huge solar farm that would sprawl across 45 miles of prime farmland in Will County. But it's going for a final vote without a recommendation that many would see as needed to move along. Tom Becker, who is a Green Garden Township resident and the chair of an environmental group called the Watershed Committee, is joining me now. Thank you for your time.
Sure thing. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about what's going on here.
You know, this project will devastate our rural community. It's, as you mentioned, it's sprawling across 3 rural townships and will consume 6,100 acres of our farmland. This is not a farmer-driven project. The majority of the parties who are investing in this project, the partners with this corporation, do not live in the township that they're leasing the land. The majority are land investors. And if we lift the lid on this corporation, we're finding a company called Accelerate Infrastructure, which is an industrial corporation. This is also not an issue of power for our community. I spoke with a ComEd engineer, and he said that solar energy in Illinois only has a capacity factor of about 10 to 12%. So when they talk about this project having powering 160,000 homes, it will only keep those lights on for about 2 to 3 hours of that maximum capacity. What this corporation has done is they are holding hostage our power plant. They bought our power plant in Manhattan. Now, it has a capacity factor of 99%. Natural gas, you turn it on 24/7, it's there for you. This corporation had the option. If they really want to reduce our electricity costs, they could upgrade this power plant to about 700 megawatts. But instead, they bought the power plant to use it as a skeleton to attach these 6,100 acres, 1.5 million solar panels across our prime farmland, which will be 200 times use of our land to get about 10% of the power that they could get from this power plant. And this is all happening from 2 laws, 2023 Illinois law on solar that was passed by the legislature, and a 2023 ordinance passed by our county. What that has done is it has stripped all the rural residents of our traditional zoning rights. These laws have shredded our comprehensive plans. We have a site for solar in our industrial district in our comprehensive plan. That's been shredded because they now can put it in any cornfield, in any hayfield, anywhere. And they've even stripped our county board of the right to discretion. Our county board, I believe, has approved about 60 solar facilities. They've rejected 10. And now there's this new appellate group in the 3rd district that states as long as the solar company meets the minimum requirements, they can put it anywhere. They have more power than our townships, more power than the residents, and even more power than our county board, and that is unconstitutional, and that's what we're going to be challenging.
And so when you say challenge, you all are planning to file a lawsuit, or have you already filed it?
We're planning to file this with adjacent landowners. This will be a pro bono lawsuit. It'll have to be brought by my brother's law firm. And we are going to be challenging both the state laws being unconstitutional because it strips us of our power to preserve our rural communities in the way that we have developed for 5 or 6 generations. And we'll also be challenging the county ordinance because it is allowed specifically for this scattered site where you see sites over 45 square miles. And in fact, when we first started this corporation did not come to our townships. They were secretly collecting land with non-disclosure agreements, and we found 11,000 acres that were under lease at one time. They have since this time revised that. But this is the kind of monstrosity to what happens when you have laws in place that benefit one industry but is not applied to any other industry in Illinois.
These are very serious allegations that you're making. And I mean, I'm sure before you get to a lawsuit, you all have had to have raised your concerns with the board, with those who are going to be voting soon. So what was your, what were your complaints met with?
Actually, we were not allowed to do so. My brother wanted to do cross-examination of the solar company and their representatives, and the Land Use Department and the Will County State's Attorney did not allow us to have cross-examination for us to use in the lawsuit. And that is a serious concern. Plus, they had the first two meetings on the 30th and 31st of March. It already went to the next committee in 2 days. And many of the board members said, how could we even look at the issues? They didn't even have the minutes available. We feel this is a rush job because it's my understanding that there are taxpayer incentives that are sitting on the line, and they have to get started by, I believe, July 4th. And if they don't, they will lose, I believe they can get up to half of their project, which is $1.2 billion. Half of the project would be paid for by the taxpayers. And that's why I think this is being rushed through. As a watershed committee chair, we are not seeing the traditional preservations of our natural resources. There's no jurisdictional reviews of our wetlands, and we have, of the 96 parcels involved, 84 are protected waters of the U.S., and we're not seeing any of the traditional preservation of those sites before they proceed with this. And that is required, we believe, under the solar statute.
Well, thank you for coming on, letting us know what's going on. We certainly hope that you will continue to update us as you get more information, and let us know how things are going along the way, whether this vote actually happens. It's supposed to be on April 16th, or whether maybe there's something that happens before then, be it your lawsuit or something else that keeps them from moving forward, at least for a time period, so that you all can maybe possibly get on the same page.
Well, and our concern is that Earthrise has not come to our residents. They have not gone to our townships to inform us. They were out here for 3 years doing this. I learned about this by accident because a neighbor had called me on a watershed issue, and she said, I got a non-disclosure agreement for $100,000 to run a line through my property. What is this? I don't want this next to my property. We have a farmer who was offered $3 million to run a line through his farm, which was a family farm he's had for 4 generations. And they would have damaged he's concerned about the damage to the tiles that his great-grandfather put in. And that would flood the rest of the neighborhood. And he would not take that money in order to protect his neighborhood. So these are the people we're fighting for. And we have a wonderful group of residents, wonderful group of townships that are coalescing together to challenge this. And we believe our county board has the right to have the discretion to vote yes or no this, not to have that taken away from them.
Thank you for coming on the show here today. We understand your frustrations here. As I said, keep us updated from here, okay?
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your kindness.
Absolutely. And I do need to make sure that we give you Earthrise Energy's side of things here. They do say that they have gone above and beyond all regulations, that this would be much needed energy. They feel as though they have followed the law. But maybe the jury is still out on what happens from here. So we will continue to stay invested on the latest developments on this. Again, it is a huge moment for Will County, and we'll see what happens. 3:17, give us 2 minutes. We'll be right back with our next conversation. right, everyone. Just about 3:20 right now, and boy, is there a huge story brewing out of Wisconsin right now. We've got to turn things over to the experts, those who are following what's going on with the University of Wisconsin on a regular basis. That's the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Kelly Meyerhofer is joining me. She's covered higher education in Wisconsin since 2018. And have you seen anything like this?
No, this is new for me.
Yeah. So clear up where we are with this situation with the University of Wisconsin president. Is he staying? Is he going? What's happening?
At the moment, he's still the president. The UW Board of Regents may meet over this Easter weekend to terminate him. They have asked for him to resign, and he says he has not been given a reason to leave, and so he wants to stick around.
Do we know why they're asking him to resign?
No, it's pretty unclear. According to a letter that he sent to the board president, he says he was not given a reason, and the board president said each board member had their own perspective, but that an unidentified majority of the 18 board members had lost confidence in his leadership.
A vote of no confidence is never a good thing. Kind of puts a question mark on how you do move forward, if you move forward. But obviously, there's still some time for something to change. Was there a sense that there was maybe tension building between the board and the president before this?
Yeah, that's a question a lot of people have asked me, and I hadn't really sensed that at all. I saw that the board had met in a closed-door session earlier this week to discuss ongoing personnel matters. But I didn't know it was going to be anything like this. I feel like typically boards, when they want their president or chancellor or leader to step down, there's a private conversation. They agree, that they'll step down on this certain date, and it's announced, and everyone moves on, and there's no sort of like public stalemate going on.
So how is the school doing right now? I mean, are there maybe some things that could signal, there's trouble in paradise? Like, is enrollment up? Are there any financial issues? How is the school doing right now?
Well, the president oversees the entire state university system, so it's not one particular school, but he actually oversees 13 universities, and then there's a chancellor at each of those universities. President Rothman's tenure, he's been in office for about 4 years. Enrollment has gone slightly up at most of these campuses that have sometimes struggled to enroll students amid these demographic challenges. There was a moment in 2023 when the state legislature was holding up some employee pay raises and building projects because they wanted to eliminate some DEI programs on campuses. The president negotiated a deal with lawmakers, but then the board voted against that plan. And that's really the only other public instance in which we saw the board break from what he had recommended. Of course, a few days after that vote, the board, several board members flipped their vote. And so then they did make some concessions on campus diversity efforts.
Mm-hmm. So that would be a signal. There was at least at one point a rough patch. It could have been a rough patch in 2023 for this board and this president, but they could have very well, patched things up since then, except now we're here. So let me ask you this. He's immediately put out a letter saying, hey, I have a list of accomplishments with this school system. If that's not proof of performance, what is?
Yeah, that's exactly what he did. And so far, the board members have not really responded. I've reached out to the board president. She hasn't responded to me. Some other board members were unwilling to talk. I think the only statement that was put out, just said they wouldn't comment on personnel matters, and the board's in charge of, the future of the state universities.
Have you spoken to any students, any people who are impacted by all of this? Because it really did come as a what is going on there?
Yeah, several lawmakers have weighed in. Two Republican state lawmakers are pretty unhappy with how the board has handled this matter, and they say that the president deserves an explanation for why he's being asked to leave. Of course, we have a Democratic governor who appointed most of the board members that serve on the Board of Regents, and he said today at a stop over in western Wisconsin that he said, quote, "You hate to have it happen this way, but at the end of the day, that's something the Board of Regents will take care of." So he's taken a fairly hands-off approach to the matter.
Wow. Okay. Where do you go next with your reporting on this? What are you all looking into next?
Yeah, the president in one of his letters said that the board may meet over Easter weekend. So, that's what I'll be watching for this weekend if there is a meeting. It hasn't been noticed yet under our state law. It has to be like a 24 hours notice. So it could be tomorrow. That's sort of what the president has hinted at. But as of now, no meeting notice has gone out.
And have you all already looked into, let's say this is a done deal, not theoretically a done deal, as in there's no way of patching this up, and they do end up, he does end up without a job. Let's say that. He does end up without a job. Have you all looked into how much the school would owe him?
Yeah, he actually has a limited appointment, so he serves at the will of the board. It's sort of unlike a lot of college president contracts where there's a buyout or something, or the board has to pay if they leave. He didn't have a fixed term contract, and so the board has the right to fire him at will. Of course, if he believes that they've fired him, on illegal grounds, he could sue. But, we don't really know what we're dealing with at this point, what the reasons are for them firing him.
Very interesting. At will president. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what the weekend holds.
Yes, we will. Thanks.
Thank you for your time. Could get quite spicy this weekend. We shall see. Thank you. Great chatting with you, Kelly. Thank you.
Too. Thanks.
All right. 327 at will president. That is interesting. I wonder how many presidents fall under that category throughout the country. I would think there aren't many, but I don't know. I really don't know. It's about 3:28 though. Let's take a 2-minute break. We are getting ready to talk about our lovely weather today. Don't we deserve to be able? Good Friday, right? Good weather on Good Friday. We deserve that. We had quite the rough night last night. So we're getting ready to talk a little bit about where we go from here. But let's savor this weather on Good Friday. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. 3:31. Welcome back. Meteorologist Mark Strell with us now. We had quite the ruckus yesterday with the weather.
It was perhaps a kerfuffle. A ruckus or a kerfuffle.
In any term that you'd like to use for it, it was a lot.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. We had temperatures, wild swings, we had showers, we had thunderstorms. We did have a tornado warning, but there was no tornado associated with that.
Thank
It was
goodness.
the Weather Service just being proactive. They saw some spin in the clouds, and so they called that out. So we were on the air for about 45 minutes describing that yesterday. We do have more potential strong showers and thunderstorms again today. Now the focus is going to be off to the southwest of Chicago, quite a ways, but we do have the threat of that migrating here into the city.
So is that like another round of this system, or is this a brand new system?
This is a brand new system taking the place of the old system. It's like billiard balls. You know, one gets knocked out of the way. Here comes a new one that knocked it out of the way and now is taking its place. So spring's a very active time. These systems zip across the country pretty quickly. And so as soon as one moves out, in this particular case, another one is moving in.
Okay, and what is it? What's coming with this one?
Well, I expect to see some showers and thunderstorms again as we go through the evening and the overnight hours. There's also all threats are on the table. But again, the main threat, especially for tornadoes, would be far southwest, probably maybe the panhandle of southern LaSalle County. We're talking about south of Interstate 80, and the biggest threat is off to the south into the southwest. So you can see this on radar here. You can see that red box. That is a portion of western Illinois, but it's primarily Iowa and Missouri. That red box is a tornado watch box, and that means that that is the area most likely to see the development of some tornadoes. Below that is a yellow box. That is a severe thunderstorm watch box. Again, severe weather off to our south and to our southwest, kind of sneaking right into northern Illinois. And then you can see that area of showers and thunderstorms, really northwestern Illinois. That will be non-severe, but we could see some showers and thunderstorms. Those are kind of lifting a little bit more to the north out of into Wisconsin. And this is our severe weather potential. The green is a 1, the yellow is a 2, the orange is a 3. That is on a 5 scale. So you can see that we are the lowest of the 5. And then you can see how it progressively gets a little stronger as you travel off to the south and to the southwest. Again, the yellow is south of Interstate 80. It does eclipse a portion of LaSalle County, maybe Grundy County, and then off to the south and to the southwest. And then the orange, which is what we were kind of up against yesterday in some parts of the region, that is well off towards the Mississippi River. But again, we'll have all threats. And then look at this, the temperatures today, they're all over the board again.
Yeah.
Look at 45 degrees up the lake, and we have temperatures in the mid-60s down in the south end. So, temperatures all over the board. Winds a little bit gusty. We've got some teens and 20s.
Nothing
and we'll see.
compared to yesterday.
Yesterday
I thought I was going to blow away.
We had non-thunderstorm winds yesterday that were in the 40, 50 mile per hour category. And, today, most of the winds will be associated, the higher winds will be associated with, strong thunderstorms. There's the tornado risk, and you see the most significant risk, not here in the city necessarily, but off to the south and to the southwest. And we'll be here throughout the evening to keep an eye on that. All hazards are possible. Severe hail risk, again, that's off to the west, southwest. The wind, again, we are still in the risk category and the flood category, but again, most significant off to the west and to the southwest.
We had that flood graphic up yesterday. O'Hare, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
On the road to O'Hare, I saw videos of people that, there obviously were ground stops, but of huge puddles that people could, were trying to navigate, some of them driving through, trying to get around.
Yeah, I-190 was down to 1 lane because of just a deluge of rainfall that came down in some pretty localized areas. That was one of them. And, you mentioned the ground stop. We had ground stops, I'm sure because of the weather. But think about this. The main road into O'Hare is down to 1 lane.
Crazy.
So you have flight crews, pilots, and flight attendants that can't get to the next flight because they're jammed up just like everybody else.
True.
It just becomes kind of a domino effect, one after the other.
Yeah, wild videos that were online of all of that. So it's been nice to be able to have kind of a lull, but you're saying don't get complacent.
We will have some showers and thunderstorms as we go through the evening, and especially even after midnight. midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. There could be some leftover rainfall early tomorrow morning and maybe a shower that fires up again during your Saturday. Small risk of that. I think after this main stuff goes through overnight tonight, most of the rainfall should be out of here, certainly by the morning hours, mid-morning, and I think much of the rest of the weekend should be dry. Easter Sunday especially should be dry.
Wonderful. You know, you've got all of the Easter outfits that were planned for quite some time, the sunrise services, brunch, everything else that will be taking place, the Easter egg hunts, all of those good things, and we don't want them to be like hunting through mud.
No, well, it may be muddy based on the rainfall that we had before. But moms and dads, do not plant your Easter eggs in the mud. Put them in the grass.
Put them
Important
in the grass.
safety note. Yeah.
And then as we go into next week, well, I would love to just stop the conversation at
Right there.
Sunday and just hold on the weekend. Look at all those folks who are out there. But we do, what happens once we start going into next week?
Well, next week, it's not going to be particularly cold. Not going to be particularly warm. We're going to see temperatures kind of dancing back and forth. A lot of 50s, some 60s. There'll be some clouds. We'll have a chance of a few showers, especially later in the 7-day forecast. But I don't see anything severe at this time. But we are still looking at a little bit of. Before we had kind of the windshield wiper effect. We had 80s one day, then 35 the next, and then 75, and then 40s. We're going to have it a little bit more even, a little more even, Steven, but nothing really too cold and nothing really too hot. It's the right porridge. Yeah.
We've been searching for it for a while. We've kind of been all over the place. We've just had so many different things that have happened within the last couple of weeks weather-wise.
It has been exhausting, kind of tracking all of this stuff, especially with the severe weather. But hopefully after we get through tonight's severe weather round, it won't be too bad, and hopefully, and then we'll be able to quiet down for a little bit.
And for last night's severe weather, the strong storms that we did have come through, did it cause any damage? Whereas you all were on air for a warning for a while. Did we actually see tornadoes anywhere, whether it was outside of our area even?
I think there were a few confirmed tornadoes outside of our viewing area. We did have one warning. It was for McHenry County and for Northern Lake County. That was late in the event. And the National Weather Service even came out and they said, look, we've been tracking this line of showers and thunderstorms. There's been kind of a consistent rotation. We're not really seeing any tornadoes here, but this consistent pattern of rotation, which is kind of the precursor for tornadoes. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to be safe and issue that tornado warning. So no tornadoes out of that. We did have a lot of straight line wind damage, which can oftentimes be just as damaging.
Yeah, I just had to make a quick trip to CVS, and I'm like, well, up against the wind, like, oh my gosh, this is crazy.
I think you've discovered a new form of exercise. We put you in a wind tunnel.
And the crazy thing was there were some, we have so many visitors. We were just showing them there on one of the live pictures. There's so many visitors who are out and about right now for spring break. And here I am like, oh my gosh. And there were some visitors who were out and they're like, Windy City.
No, hey people, that's not why it got its name. That's not why
they called it Windy City.
You want wind, go to Rock Springs, Wyoming.
Yeah, in my mind, I actually thought that, like, that's not why they call it Windy City, but I won't be that person to spoil it
call
for
them
you.
out.
Yeah.
Hey, local here.
Is
that's
what it
not
is.
Why.
Thank you so much for
You're
coming up.
welcome.
We know you got to get ready for the 4 o'clock news. Everybody give us 2 minutes and we'll be back shortly. We're going to talk to our own Joni Lum about her special that's also giving a bit of local history that'll be airing later tonight.
I love that Joni Lum.
We all do.
Who doesn't? Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone. 3:45 right now, and boy, oh boy, does my colleague Joni Lum have an incredible special that she has worked on to give us a bit of a peek behind the curtains, if you will, to Streeterville, neighborhood not too far from here. And let's go ahead and bring her in now so that we can talk a little bit about what you can expect when it airs. Joni, one, great to have you here on Chicago Live. It's always a special day when we have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to join you.
All right. Tell us about what you have uncovered.
Well, I literally uncovered almost. So they've been digging on this street in Streeterville to put in the utility lines for the high rise that's at the end of the street. It was going to, remember, it was the original Chicago Spire site, went through different projects, and now it's going to be a 72-story high rise. So they need a lot of utility lines. They needed to put in gas and electricity, and so the digging they did was really deep. It was like a 25 or 35 foot trench. And one day they ran into some stuff that they brought up. Part of it looked like it was a part of a boat, and then one day they brought up some boots, and so it was like, what is down there? Now, you know that Streeterville is mostly landfill. What I learned from this story was that the shoreline for Lake Michigan used to be at St. Clair. That's one street east of Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
But they started putting all the debris from the Chicago fire into the lakefront to make that lakefront a little bit bigger, to create land there. And it was all because of a guy named Captain George Streeter. He ran his boat aground at Lake Michigan. He sounds like a really drunken sailor. There's so many great legends about him. And he said, okay, I'll just leave it right there. I'm not going to clean it up or drag it out. And he invited everyone else to bring their debris and put it around his boat so that it would one day become land. The controversy about George Streeter is I think he tried to claim it as his own, because that was his boat and he was the captain of the boat. So now, all this land, this wonderful, valuable lakefront land is mine. So we were, wondering, could this boat be like a sister boat to his or just another boat? And then there was all this other debris down there. And apparently when they've built the high rises in this neighborhood, they always run into stuff like that, stuff from the past, because the rest of the city was dumping their garbage here. The great thing about it is that, it was landfill. It was rough back when George Streeter was living here. It was the wild Chicago area, and now it's this upscale neighborhood with these expensive apartments. We called in historian Gail Spreen. She's a real estate agent in Streeterville. She's lived in Streeterville, and she has been collecting items like this. So she knew right away the connection, and it's not necessarily George Streeter's boat, but it is a boat. She, however, the history about what she knows about George Streeter is very interesting, and she has the actual anchor from his boat because they were able to compare in pictures. And so what a wonderful discovery they made just by digging around under the street. It makes you wonder how much historical stuff is down there. Now, I don't think it's valuable. Like, you couldn't sell it for a lot because there's so much garbage, but it is interesting, and like a human tie to the past of Chicago's origins. And so that's what you'll see in our story when it airs this afternoon.
It really makes you wonder what else we have not unearthed yet.
It's true, so I live in Streeterville, in an original place where they had to dig up the street, and they were building a high-rise across the street, and we barely had a street. And everyone was going over to get some of those big bricks because they're really, they were old and they were sturdy, and they would make really great pavers for your garden. So my neighbors were going and, using their laundry baskets to pick up these bricks and bring them home. And so that was like the first I had realized that, there's so much underneath when they start digging. And there was industry in this area as well. And that's why some of the areas were parking lots, and they couldn't build on them for quite a while. But what I'm told is that, there's so much history right in Streeterville because it's made out of landfill.
And I'm wondering, the old saying, like, one man's trash is another man's treasure. Would preservationists ever tried to stop efforts to build over there because of that?
Sure, I haven't looked into that. I do know that sometimes the construction crews just kind of unearth it and like pass it on or keep it, and there is no real process. But when they were able to detect stuff that's important, like, the anchor to George Streeter's boat, they did put it away. And they'd like to make a museum out of these artifacts, this part of Chicago history. And if you've ever been in the neighborhood, there's a statue of George Streeter. It's right outside the Yoke Restaurant at Grand and McClurg. That too has a great story behind it too, because the historian that is in our story, her husband was an artist. He had like this mystical kinship with George Streeter. I mean, they're kind of alike. And Dennis Downs, he's just living in the wrong century. He should have been around at the same time as George Streeter because he's an adventurer and he can like build a whole house with his hands. He made that statue and he, poured himself into it. He passed away just a couple of years ago, but every year on the other side of that block, they do like a run aground party where they dress up in top hats and kind of reenact George Streeter crashing his boat into the land and making it into a neighborhood. And I hear it, I haven't gone, but I hear it's really zany. They usually do it in July. And the person who attends, I'm not sure if he pretends to be Streeter. I do know he has a top hat, is Second Ward Alderman Brian Hopkins. He also is in our story because he knows his history too.
Let me ask you this. I mean, I can just hear the joy in your voice as you're talking about all of this. How hard was it to like find a closing for this story? I mean, I'm sure you kind of wanted it to go on and on.
It was happening in the winter, the dead of winter. These poor guys were digging in the street and found something significant, and I knew I couldn't do anything with it right then. So the end came when I was just racing to get this on the air because I want people to know about it. I want people to see it. And so it had to come together fast. They were working on that street, they were covering that street, then they uncovered that street. I swear it was like a moat. It was so deep and so inconvenient for the people who live on the street. And so I didn't want anyone else to find out, hey, there's this connection to the origins of Chicago, or this this other boat and these other guys. So it was like just a hurry, let's tell this story.
Truly great reporting. Thank you so much, Joni. And when is it going to air?
It's going to air today during the 4 and the 5 o'clock news. I wouldn't be surprised if it airs on the weekends because sometimes that happens. And I hope you can catch it because it was really fun to tell.
We're definitely going to have to catch it, and there are multiple opportunities, everybody. Thank you so much for making sure that we know about what's going on before everything gets covered up and, everyone's like, nothing to see here.
In Chicago.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much. You too.
All right. Take care. All right, everybody. We're going to take another 2-minute break again. Joni's piece, her special, is going to air this evening in the 4-5 and likely tonight after the 9 o'clock news as well and into the weekend. So you'll have a few opportunities. But take 2 minutes and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. 3:57 right now, so you know we are shortly going to turn you over to the 4 o'clock news. But there are a few things that we're going to be monitoring into the weekend that I'll tell you about right now. One, of course, we're going to be monitoring basketball, right? So the women's Final Four tonight, okay? Make sure you're rooting for the ladies tonight. And then the big Illini game will be tomorrow. The men's Final Four tomorrow, and the Illini game is going to be at 5:09 p.m. Of course, that's Illinois against UConn. Right after that, around 7:50, will be Michigan against Arizona. And we certainly hope that our folks here in Illinois will be celebrating by the time that game comes around. So we're rooting for them right now. We're obviously still rooting for our 4 astronauts who are up in space right now as they continue on with their mission with Artemis 2. We're getting fantastic pictures already, and we know that we'll get many more, but the most important thing is that this crew will be okay in the midst of this test flight as they embark upon a historic mission on our behalf. And of course, today, for all who believe, it is Good Friday, and we're in the midst of Holy Week. So we were watching, you know, as the Pope was making his way in the Stations of the Cross.
Can you go back? See it in that photo. I don't see him at all in this picture. The producers of the music video said they didn't know when they hired her who her parents were. Okay. You can believe that or not. Have a good Easter weekend, yes. And we will see you Monday.
Live from Chicago, this is Fox 32 News at 4.
A lot going on. We're hearing from the aunt of a Southside teenager killed in a hit and run.
A suburban school calls in police after AI-generated photos of students began to spread.
And Illini fans gear up for the Final Four in Indy. When and where to celebrate.